Hi.
Hello, how are you?
Very well, thank you.
Oh, I'm so glad to see you and to be able to talk to you.
Nice to see you.
So, we are very excited to have you here in Bucharest in October. I hope you're at least as excited as you were in 2018 when you came here for the first time.
I'm really looking forward to it. And I'm really excited because look at this. I just got the first copy of the book.
Oh my goodness, good. Oh, so
and
quick.
it was in Bucharest that it was in 2018 I was there.
Yes, in 18, yeah.
And it was there when I got the contract for the book.
Yes, I remember.
And I said, oh my God, now I have to do it, but here it is.
Yeah, but do you remember at that time you told me that you're gonna stop having lectures and seeing clients and everything just to be able to write the book?
Yeah.
So you managed to do that?
Not quite, but
Not quite.
I did write the book. And then
Yeah.
COVID happened, and that was a good thing because it means I couldn't travel,
Yes, indeed, you couldn't travel.
I did a lot of webinars online, but I couldn't travel, so
Yeah.
it's all
I
good.
think the pandemic helped you to stay at home and do some lectures online and
Yeah.
yeah.
And how's it going for you guys? How's it going for you?
Oh, busy time, lots of courses, lectures, workshops, lots of clients, lots of people who ask for our help, our therapist team in our institute. So yeah, we've been quite busy and quite happy people really understood what trauma is, with these events. Yeah, people were more open to understand what really happens inside of them. So that's why I'm quite happy we could manage to have these lectures this year. We tried last year, but we couldn't do it. So this year is really welcomed by lots of people here.
Good.
And that's why I would like them to know a little bit more about what we are preparing for them.
Okay. Well, I'd like to know more. I'd like to know more about it too. So that's good.
Okay. For the first day, we prepare something about parent-child relationship.
Good.
And that's why I would ask you, because we work a lot with early traumas, with trauma of development. And you also said in lots of interviews and in this new book that love is not enough.
Yeah.
Still, many people think that love heals all the wounds.
Yeah.
So how would you comment for parents why they should know that love is not enough and what else is necessary?
Yeah. So I used to think as a parent that if I loved my kids, that'd be enough.
Mm-hmm.
The love is the feeling that the parent has. The love is not necessarily the experience that the child has.
Mm-hmm.
And there are certain basic needs that children have. So love has to include understanding.
Mm-hmm.
Love a person, feel something for them, but if I don't understand what their needs are,
Yeah.
difficult for them to experience being loved in the way that they need to be.
Mm-hmm.
So start off with, what are the needs of children?
Yes.
Now, what I also have to say is that the way we're parenting these days is not the way that we evolved as a species.
Mm-hmm.
Like parenting didn't used to be an isolated nuclear family or an isolated mom or dad living in an apartment by themselves. Parenting happen in a context of community and connection and collaboration, where children were always around the adults the whole day, not just the parents, but also the whole community of adults.
Yeah, the whole village.
The whole village and the whole tribe, the whole clan,
Yeah.
So there's a lot of demands on modern parents that our nature just isn't suited to meet, So there's a lot of pressure on parents. Now, then we have forgotten what children actually need. So what are there's in the new book, actually, I talk about the irreducible needs of children.
Yeah.
Needs of children are the needs that if you take them away, that's going to interfere with healthy development.
Yeah.
By the way, there's two ways you can hurt children. You can hurt children by doing bad things to them. Happens to a lot of kids.
Yeah.
But you can also hurt children by not giving them what they need.
Yeah.
So what are the needs?
And abuse or
Yeah.
Yeah.
In the absence of abuse or anything, just if you meet children's needs, they're going to be hurt. What are the needs of children? The first one is unconditional attachment relationship with the parents, where the child doesn't have to be good or pretty or successful or compliant or smart. They just
or happy all the time.
That's right. Yeah. Just because they exist. So there's a well exist exactly as you are. That unshakable attachment relationship. A lot of parents love their kids, but they don't know how to accept their kids unconditionally. So then the child has a sense of rejection. So that's the first need is that unconditional attachment, accepting relationship with absolute security. The second thing that children need is what we call rest. Rest means the child doesn't have to work to make the relationship. The child doesn't have to keep peace in the family, take on the stresses of the parents. The child doesn't have to make themselves anything other than what they are. So they don't have to work to be accepted.
Yes.
Rest.
Or to make the parent a better parent, in a way.
So many kids grow up with so many pressures to meet the parents' needs and expectations. So that's the second, was that rest. I mean, then we're always restless. Our lives are restless because we something we should be doing, you know. So that's the second one. The third one, really important, is the freedom to experience all the emotions that come up for them. Our brains are wired to certain emotions: fear, pain, grief, joy. A child will naturally go through all those states, but often in our society, we don't know how to make room for the child's entire spectrum of feelings. We make some feelings acceptable, other feelings not acceptable. That means suppress parts of themselves. It's really important. So there's a lot of bad parenting advice out there. I was actually in Romania and Bucharest in May at a conference. There was another Canadian there, psychologist, and his advice is that an angry child should be made to sit by themselves.
I know what you mean. Yeah.
Well, that means that the child gets the message that his anger is not acceptable to parents. That means in order to be acceptable, the child has to push down their anger. The outcome is depression later on in life. The outcome is autoimmune disease. So that need to express and to be able to be accepted with all our emotions. 3. The fourth need, very often not available in our society, is free play out there in nature. Now, play, we have a circuit in our brain for play. Not just we do, cats do, bears do, dogs do, lions do, all play. Play is an important aspect of the brain development and healthy development, much more important than learning, actually. It's really important now. Our kids hardly play anymore.
And the learning comes through playing and through relaxing playing.
Yeah. And when they do play, they often play with these things.
Yes.
And this is not play. So play is creative, it's inventive, it's spontaneous. It's not, it doesn't have a winner and a loser.
That's work. Sometimes.
So those are the 4 essential needs. Now, in our society, children often don't get those. So children can be hurt in loving families that don't know how to meet their needs.
Okay, so I'm glad we can talk more about this, because people really need to know what they can do for their children and what they can do for themselves. And that's another question that I have for you, and I hope we can talk more in our event. Back in 2018, when we had a talk, you said you started at around 40 to do your work on yourself, if I remember correctly. But in the movie, The Wisdom of Trauma, you said, I started quite late in my life to look about myself. And at the same time, I started earlier.
Yeah.
My life changed, your life changed, but that doesn't mean everything changes perfect. So what would you recommend to a young person or to a person in his or her 40s or 50s or 60s who just heard about trauma? Even though we try to do some work in the last 20 years about trauma and healing, but what would you recommend? How early? How soon after they understand something about trauma and childhood trauma, especially?
Well, I say the first issue is not trauma. The first issue is, how's my life going? Am I living the life that I want? Do I have the relationship that I want? Working in relationship, do I get upset all the time, or am I present and calm? Is the work that I'm doing satisfying for me? How do I feel about myself as a human being? In other words, self-reflection. Trauma is one of the explanations as to why things don't work for people. But you don't start off with the question of trauma. You start with the question of, are things working for me? And for some people, it takes a certain degree of failure or suffering to oh no, this is not the life that I had envisioned. I'm not even sure it's my life that I'm leading here. Whose life am I leading anyway? So the first question is self-reflection. That capacity to ask questions.
Yeah.
People do that at different.
I'll tell you later.
People do that at different stages. Some people do it after they get a disease, and they get cancer or multiple sclerosis, or they get a bad divorce, or they lose a job, or they lose a friendship, or all of a sudden they get depressed. So usually suffering that wakes people up and makes them ask, what's going on? Now, once they start asking, sooner or later they're going to get to trauma.
At the same time, and you mentioned that in your book, people sometimes try to normalize their lives. So self-reflection means to look at yourself, ask the right question, and in a way to be honest to yourself and answer the right answers, I would say. Because otherwise you say, okay, but others suffers even more than me. Other people's life, it's much worse than mine. So
I have an answer to that. First of all, you can't force anybody into self-reflection. They do it or they don't do it. But when somebody says to me, other people's lives are worse, I say, that's probably true. So what? Would you say to a 5-year-old child who comes to you with suffering, well, it's not so bad. Think about all the people who are suffering even more. In other words, you wouldn't say that because it's not a very kind thing to say. It's also not very kind to yourself to compare your own suffering with somebody else's. Sure, you can always find somebody who's suffering more. Always. But how kind is it to somebody to say to them, including yourself, don't worry about it, let it go, other people are suffering more. It's very unkind to compare suffering from one person to the next.
Unkind, in a way, unrealistic. It's like you don't take care of your finger if you cut it just because your arm isn't broken or you haven't collapsed because of that.
Exactly.
Okay, and about work relationships.
I just say one more thing.
Sure.
When people say that my suffering isn't so bad, that itself is a sign of trauma.
Yeah.
Because one of the things about trauma is people become very unkind to themselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, you're saying about work?
Yeah. I was thinking about your book about toxic culture and toxic relationships and toxic communities, And of course, I'm thinking about work relationships, and I wonder now in economic, there is a trend about the Great Resignation. I don't know if you've heard about it, and people quit their jobs. And of course, you, me, and some other psychologists and some other probably practitioners in the health area recommend take care of your job. And if it's really too stressful, just think about another type of work or another job. So right now, people seem to take that very seriously. What would you recommend to organizations? What would you recommend to the psychologists or the HR managers who work in those organizations? How to take care of this relationship in the work area? Because at home, you are quite clear in your answer.
It's a real dilemma because in Eastern Europe under communism, there used to be a joke.
Yeah.
Remember it? It said, "What is capitalism? Capitalism, man exploits man. And what is socialism? And socialism is the other way around,
Right.
So in societies that are materialistic, the goal is not how do we promote the common good, but the goal is how do we extract more profit from people, which is the case under communism in Eastern Europe, and it's certainly the case under capitalism internationally. When that's the goal, then everything has to serve that goal. So a lot of organizations, they don't ask themselves, what do our employees need to have fulfilling lives? So how do we extract the most work for them for the least amount of money? How it works. Then people are stressed, and you think, well, how do we reduce the stress? So to organizations, I would say, can you make the life experience of your employees an important part of your goals? That you're not just here to generate a profit. Generating a profit is a legitimate goal, but you're not just here for that. You're also here because you have 100 or 50 or 10 or 500 human beings who spend an important part of their lives on the job site. What do people need on the job site and to have a meaning? So first of all, they need to have some sense of control, that they have input into what happens to them. They need to have a sense of meaning, that they're contributing something that's worthwhile to contribute to. They need to have a sense of collaboration, that they're not just pieces of machine with other human beings. They need not to be treated in an arbitrary, authoritarian manner. That goes against the human need for freedom. We talk about free societies, but how many people really experience freedom on the job? Freedom from fear, freedom from being controlled, freedom to be themselves. So these are the questions that organizations need to ask themselves. I think it's perfectly compatible to have an intention to create a product and to turn a profit and to treat people like human beings. These questions have to be asked. For the individual, meaning and purpose is an important need of human beings. When I talked about the needs of children, but then is the need of adults. And amongst the needs of adults is a sense of meaning and a sense of purpose, that I'm not just a cog in a machine. So people who have the freedom to ask themselves, is the work that I'm doing expressing who I really am as a human being?
That's a very important question, and I hope many people ask themselves, first of all themselves.
Yeah.
And then...
Now, when people are under extreme economic pressure, they may not have the luxury to ask that question. So in this society, it's a very difficult question to ask. But it's still important to ask it, because even if the answer is, my work doesn't give me that meaning, and the person at least can say, well, I'm not my work. It's just something I do in order to put food on the table for my family. But I'm not going to define myself through that work. That's not who I am.
Or through the requirements that this boss or hierarchic structure requires for me.
Exactly.
Okay. That means we need to take care of our needs, and we hope we can speak more about the needs, the human being needs, children and adults, and then to become more natural, that's the way of feeling normal. And maybe if you want, and we still have time to talk a little bit about normal and abnormal related to your book.
Yeah. So the English title of the book is The Myth of Normal, Trauma, Illness, and Healing in a Toxic Culture. And what I mean by that is, if you want to study a zebra, the animal, the zebra, study the zebra in a zoo behind a cage, or would you study them out there in nature? If you understand what is a zebra, where would you study them? Would you study them in a natural environment? Modern society, studying human beings in modern society is like studying zebras in a cage. We're so far removed from our natural habitat, so that a lot of the behaviors and relationships and values that we think are normal are not at all normal or natural when it comes to human evolution and human needs. In fact, they're toxic. So that what we consider to be normal, well, let me give you a very extreme and maybe disturbing example. If everybody in Bucharest tortured their cats, then if you didn't torture your cats, you'd be abnormal.
Yeah.
Normal is what everybody does. But that's statistical average. But so something could be normal and not be healthy or natural. And what I'm saying is, in our culture, what is normal, what is the norm, is not healthy or natural. Makes people sick. That's the first point. The second point is, when it comes to depression or anxiety or ADHD or even physical illnesses, very often these are normal responses to abnormal circumstances. Then we call the people who are sick abnormal. Not. I'm saying that they have normal responses to abnormal life situations. So to develop depression or an autoimmune disease in response to trauma is a normal response to an abnormal situation. So abnormality is not an individual, it's in a situation, their so-called pathology. So in those two senses, it's the myth of normal. Normal, that's got nothing to do with reality.
I know. Yeah, that's true. And that's why we cannot blame anyone, but we need to take the responsibility for what happened to us, what other did to us, and what's the own way to healing. And I think that's another important issue here, that there is no normal way to healing.
Yeah, that's right.
Particular and personal way to healing for each of us.
Well, the capacity to heal is inside all of us. There are lots of good help available, different modalities, but ultimately we're the ones who have to have the agency. We're the ones who have to find a path that is right for us. There's also good help, medical and non-medical and psychotherapeutic and so on, but ultimately we have to be the one who knows what we need and to follow that path. That's just an absolute truth.
Yeah. Thank you, Gabor. I will love to talk to you more, but I'll keep everything for the real meeting here in October. I'm very happy you'll be here.